Okay, hello everyone and welcome to our monthly webinar. My name is Justin Cooper and I am a hard money lender and full-time real estate investor. Each month we bring in some of our friends in the industry to share their expertise. This may be through a presentation, like when we talk about wholesaling or title insurance, or we may simply interview our expert friends and dive deep into how they got started, where their investing has taken them, and what they see coming both for themselves and for the industry. You'll also have the opportunity tonight to ask us questions live on the webinar, and we'll do our best to answer each and every question. So if you are on the live webinar, we're going to be using the questions section to ask those questions. And I also want to say thank you to everyone who made it onto today's event. We know that you're giving up some of your time, so Clay and I will do everything we can to bring you the value that you're hoping for. Tonight should be easy since we're talking about a very relevant topic, self-directed IRAs. Now this webinar is brought to you by Pine Financial Group. Pine Financial is Colorado and Minnesota's premier hard money lender. Pine focuses on the needs of Colorado and Minnesota real estate investors. We are investors ourselves and we know what it takes to get deals closed. Everyone at Pine Financial Group is dedicated to the success of its clients. We only experience success when our clients are succeeding. So we have a habit of telling you when a deal should not be done. Isn't that what you want from a professional in the industry, especially someone you trust as an advisor? You will benefit from our honesty and integrity when you choose to work with us. Now, quick note before we dive into tonight's topic. If you are in Denver or in Colorado, we are hosting our Real Estate Investor Success Summit coming up in just about a month, Saturday, May 6th. So if you've been there before, you know how great it is. You need to be registering as soon as you can to make sure you get your ticket. If you don't know what it is, the best place to find out would be denveriss.com. So that's www.denveriss.com. It really is the most amazing real estate investor event in Colorado. We get anywhere from 300 to 500 attendees. We'll bring in 8 different local speakers. There's no sales pitches. We're going to wrap the day up with a panel discussion and a happy hour. We even have one of the sponsors buying your first drink at that happy hour. So it's an amazing event. You should definitely check it out. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to myself as well. Now, tonight's webinar is going to be a little bit different because Clay and I will both be discussing how you can use your self-directed IRA to invest. Clay, can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself before you dive into tonight's topic?
Sure. Glad to be here, Justin. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I started at Direction IRA about coming up on 6 years ago, and one of the things that I've found is that I really needed to have this kind of information a long time ago, and I'm trying to catch up fast. But it really is something that's often unknown, and a lot of people are a little bit wary of it because it is unknown. So hopefully what we're trying to do today is talk a little bit about the way it works, and also one of the really surprising things, and this comes from my personal experience, is that I thought that my IRA would have to have a ton of money to be able to get into real estate, and it turns out that there are options for that not to have to be. So we're going to talk about the way that leveraging money, leveraging your IRA can help you get into a property if you don't have the full purchase price. And it's always fun to hang out with the Pine guys. We've done a lot of educational events before, and typically because New Direction IRA doesn't give any tax, legal, or investment advice, it's a nice combination because they can talk a little bit more specifically about the way real estate transactions go. So delighted to be here, and let's go on to where we're going, Justin.
Dig in, Clay.
Oh, boy.
There it is.
There it is.
All right, so real quick, what does Pine Financial Group do? Well, we really do 2 things. On one hand, we raise money, and on the other hand, we lend that money out. So the money we raise can certainly come from cash, it can come from lines of credit, and similar, although we're not talking about it tonight, that money can come from an IRA. And Clay might touch briefly on it, but that's not really the point of what we're talking about is the lending or putting your IRA to work through private money lending. But that is certainly one of the ways that we have raised a lot of money, specifically through New Direction IRA clients. And of course, what we do when we're lending that money out, we lend 100%, ideally, of the deal. So on fix and flips, that means we can cover 100% of the purchase and 100% of the repairs. On a fix and hold, if you're going to do a rental property and the property needs repairs, we might be able to lend 100% of the purchase and 100% of the repairs. And tonight, what we're going to focus more on is an IRA loan where your IRA can borrow money and do a fix and flip or a fix and hold.
Okay. So why don't I go ahead and take the IRA part? So our part of the equation is really this. So we're the required custodial service for an IRA. Every IRA has to have a custodian. The IRS is giving you some tax benefits on that money, and so they're going to track it through time, and they do that in no small part through the custodian. So whether it's Schwab or Fidelity or your bank or us, we're all custodians for the IRA. We also provide the bookkeeping and administration, hopefully to make it as convenient as possible. We're responsible for the annual IRS reporting of the IRA, its value, so on and so forth. And hopefully, as I mentioned, from a technology standpoint, we're bringing some of the really cool online banking tools to IRA investing as well. It's a little bit different process because this is an account that's being held in trust, so it's not quite as simple as a bank account, but that technology is making its way to your IRA investing. And we'd love to do the education part because, like I said, a lot of people don't know exactly how this works or what the parameters are and things like that, so we're delighted to be able to share that message for anybody who would like to listen. Now, all the information that I'm going to give you tonight is for education purposes only. We don't give any tax, legal, or investment advice. We don't advocate any particular vendor or any particular asset, and we certainly encourage you to talk to your financial team anytime you are considering an investment. Our role in the equation is really to make sure that your IRA, even when it buys and sells alternative assets or hard assets, gets to keep the tax benefits that are associated with the account, whether it's a traditional or Roth or whatever the account type is. And speaking of that, the individual plans that we're talking about that can buy real estate are traditional IRA, Roth IRA, and HSA. And those accounts keep their same rules, so contribution rules, distribution rules, as well as the tax-deferred status in the middle all stays intact. The only thing that's really changing about a self-directed IRA that is buying alternative assets is that the stuff, so to speak, that the money is going to buy in that tax-advantaged state is different. So instead of it being publicly traded securities like stocks or bonds or mutual funds, it's going to be real estate. Same for these employer plans. SEP, Simple, and an individual 401k, as long as the plan document is written that way, can also invest in these hard assets or alternative assets such as real estate. And I'd like to put this slide up. It actually comes from the IRS site because a lot of that money in any account that you've made contributions to can be mobile. And you can see here, this is a rollover chart, and it's roll from and roll to, and you can see a lot of yeses on that chart. And one of the things that means is that you are often in charge of positioning that money. The significant part about that, of course, is that all IRA providers choose which assets that they handle. So some will handle just publicly traded securities, some will handle real estate, as well as any number of other assets. So really what you're looking to do is make sure that you match the funds that you have with a particular provider with the assets that you want that money to buy. And when it comes to real estate, you always have an awful lot of choices. So the IRS really doesn't weigh into real estate choices very much. The only thing they actually prohibit are collectibles and life insurance. But when it comes to the real estate realm, single family or multi-unit, apartments, condos, obviously residential, but certainly commercial as well, improved or unimproved land, any of the financial instruments that are associated with real estate, such as options or loans or trust deeds, things like that, those are all possible assets for your IRA as well. The property doesn't necessarily need to be in the United States. And you can use leverage or not. And of course, tonight we're talking about leverage as it applies to more conventional as well as a more common hard money lending situation, which can also be used by your IRA. And again, one of the nice things I think about your IRA being able to invest in real estate is that you can take your expertise and your real estate team, the same realtor, the same financiers, the same advisors that you have, and basically take your favorite strategy and move it into your IRA and have your IRA make money at it essentially the same way, except with some tax benefits. So whether your strategy is fix and hold or fix and flip, redevelop, it doesn't have to be a cash producing property. You can use short sales, foreclosures, auctions. Again, almost any of your your real estate investing strategies can be used within your IRA. Justin,
Yeah,
how would
so
one find a fix and flip?
that's a great question, Clay. And you know, we're actually hearing this more and more because as uh, I'm based here in Colorado, so we hear it a lot here in Colorado, but even nationally, we're hearing about how inventory is getting smaller and smaller, less and less properties available. So how can I go out and find a fix and flip? It's not necessarily as easy as it was yesterday to just get online, have a real estate agent, you know, show you properties or have access to the MLS to go find properties. So of course that still is probably the best way because 95% at least of the market is on the MLS. So I always have, when I'm in acquisition mode, I always have maybe even a couple real estate agents because they may focus on different parts of town or different types of properties I might be looking at. Wholesalers can be an excellent way. I also try to get on every single wholesaler's buyers list because wholesalers are another way to find properties. Wholesalers are acquisition specialists. They're going to go out and find properties, whether it's through their team of real estate agents or any of these other things we're about to chat about. Wholesalers are a great way, sometimes even to take a second look at a property. If your agent showed you a property on the MLS and you were going to buy it, you made an offer at 100,000 and you missed out on it. But what if a wholesaler made an offer at 101,000? They win the bid, they mark it up a couple grand, and now you have the chance to buy that same property again for 105. Maybe that's still within your range and you still want it. So sometimes it's even a chance to get a second look at a property. Auctions are, well, not always a great way, but certainly another avenue. It's much harder today to find properties at auction because there's not as many foreclosures today. But there's also not just the public trustee, the foreclosure auction. There's also online auctions like auction.com, hubzoo.com, ways to get properties through an auction. Can be in other great ways. Direct mail. A lot of work seems to go into this, but it can be a great way to find off-market properties, things that other people aren't doing or maybe aren't willing to do because sometimes it does take a lot of work. So different ways to send direct mail. Direct mail, of course, could be a yellow letter, something maybe handwritten, a letter that you type up. It could be a postcard, right? It's something you're sending direct to a potential distressed seller. These are the different types of lists that you may get or mail to. So an NED is a notice of election and demand. It's when the foreclosure has been started. That's like the public way of the bank saying, hey, I'm going to foreclose on you. You could get a 30, 60, 90-day late list. Those that typically refers to pre-foreclosures. So they're not officially in foreclosure yet, but they're definitely late. Might be a great way to reach out or time to reach out to the homeowner. Probates. Of course, in probates, we're talking about people who passed away, dead people. You know, they're not living in their house anymore, so maybe somebody wants to sell that house. Bankruptcy, divorce, right? There's any number of other ways. And actually, the way I've bought, probably I think my last 4 properties, is through networking. I've just grown a very substantial network, just being around, being an investor, going to different real estate investor events. I've met a lot of people, so wholesalers, just people in my office, whatever the case may be, people know that I buy properties. So if they have a property to sell or they're thinking about it, they may give me a call and I may have the first look before it even gets to a wholesaler or an auction or to a real estate agent. So several different ways to go out and find a deal. Now, once somebody's brought you a deal, how do we analyze it? Now, Pine Financial, actually, in one of our webinars, we just did a whole hour on how to analyze the deal. So I'm not going to get into it too deeply. But of course, anything that we're talking about today generally needs repairs, whether it's a fix and flip or you're going to fix up a rental property, it needs repairs. So one of the most important things you need to know in analyzing the deal is what is the after repair value? If it needs repairs, what will the value of the property be after those repairs? So of course, it's all based on comps. And what is a comp? It's a comparable sold property. Now, you can't forget about closing costs. So many people I talk to forget about closing costs, but those are real dollars associated with buying and selling properties. And they're both on the buy side and the sell side. So you can't forget to factor in your closing costs. Repairs, how much does a property actually need? Well, get out there, put a pencil on it, maybe have a contractor walk through it and figure that out. And then you start running the numbers. And ultimately, is it going to be profitable enough? Maybe look at it two ways, one as a percentage, and then the other way as a dollars. Make sure it's going to be profitable enough for you. So you found the deal, you've analyzed the deal, you want to move forward and make an offer. Now tonight we're specifically talking about your IRA buying properties. Something very, very important to understand is your IRA is not you. Your IRA is not your LLC. Your IRA is a third party. It's an individual. They stand alone. So when you write that offer, it's not you as the buyer. It's not an entity that you own as a buyer. It is your IRA as the buyer. And Clay's going to dive into this a little bit more about exactly how you need to write that out. But it is not you. And that's something very important to understand, especially from step one, making that offer.
I will. Thanks for the lead in, Justin. As he was mentioning, the thing about it that a lot of people don't really understand is because the IRS is going to give that money special tax benefits, it actually considers it to be a separate legal and financial entity. And so as Justin was mentioning, every piece of documentation about that IRA purchasing the property needs to be in the name of the IRA. And in our particular case, you'll probably recognize this naming convention. It's the company name, who is the IRA provider. FBO is for benefit of, your name and the account type. We allow people to use the account number if they don't want their name on the public record, and some people use both for added specificity. The other thing that's important, and this is kind of the slide that talks about how do you make an offer without going afoul of the IRS right away, is you don't want earnest money to come out of your own pocket. You're considered to be a disqualified person, and so your personal finances are supposed to stay separate from the IRAs. So earnest money, typically, if it's needed at the moment, is either dispersed from the IRA itself, which is already funded, or a non-disqualified person can pay it and then the IRA can pay them back. So at the very inception of a deal, what you want to think about is making the offer in the name of the IRA and making sure that earnest money is taken care of in a way that doesn't violate IRS rules. So let's look at a case study. Justin?
Yeah, so let's absolutely look at a case study here. So now this one was in Denver, and it was a couple years ago. So I want people to make sure that they're not, especially if you're in Colorado or Denver, you're not paying attention so much to the sold price or the purchase price, but just the overall transaction and how the numbers played out. That's really the most important thing, because any number can, any deal, these types of analysis can transfer into any market. And if you're hating the fact that a property may have sold in Denver for $100,000, there's no way that could happen this year. Just move the decimal. As a property sold for $1 million this year? Yeah, you could do something like that, or just multiply everything by 4. So now the ARV is 400,000. But so in this case, the after repair value is $100,000. The purchase price for this one was $41,000. So right there, we're looking at a pretty healthy spread, right? We're buying at 40 cents on the dollar about. Closing costs, $5,204. Now, why is the closing costs $5,000 on a purchase of only $40,000? You might be asking yourself that, and that's a great question. Well, the reason, or one of the reasons, is they were using hard money. So hard money is expensive. So Pine Financial, in this case, charges 4 points and 15% interest. So 4 points, 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. That's what we charge in origination to make the loan. Repairs, $20,000. Holding, now this is where that 15% comes in. 15% simple interest, and there are 4 months. So there are 4 months of payments on this. Now, this example we're going to run through here real quick is our regular loan. This is not, I'm not going to crunch the numbers right here for the IRA loan. We're going to come back and revisit that in a few minutes. So just kind of as an example to compare, because not everybody does the same things, whether it's an IRA loan or a regular loan. So Pine Financial, our regular loan, our regular rehab loan, the 100% loan I mentioned earlier, what we do is we lend up to 70% of the after repair value. And ideally, that'll cover 100% of your costs. So keep that in mind, because when we talk about the IRA loan, it's going to be a little bit different.
Yeah,
So in
and
this
one of the,
case,
just if I
go
can
ahead.
interrupt just for a second, one of the things I just wanted to mention to everybody is I kind of twisted Justin's arm a little bit to start with the generic, not generic, but outside of the IRA hard money scenario so that you could see how translatable it is inside. So we haven't gone through this slide deck a whole lot, so we're performing without a net, but I appreciate Justin going along with it because I think it'll really help you to see the way that it can be applied both inside the IRA and outside. So sorry to interrupt, Justin, but I just wanted to give people an idea of how we arrived at this.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And it's actually going to be a good way because if you have an IRA that's thinking about investing, you want to understand, how we're going to analyze the deal through the IRA, but also if you just want to maybe be buying conventionally or, through your personal name or through an LLC you want to understand that. And if you have both, maybe you want to look at which one makes the most sense for this deal or which one do I want to do or how often do I want to do them. So understanding looking at the same property and analyzing them two different ways can be really important. And depending on your situation, you might be analyzing it 3 or 4 different ways. Do I want my IRA to buy it? Do I want to buy it with hard money? Do I want to pay cash? Right? There's lots of different ways, and how you structure that financing can be super important to how the deal looks. So you've held it for 4 months. You've put 20,000 in repairs into this property on Vrain. Selling fees, 10%. So when you sell the property, we've got real estate agents. We may have concessions. So real estate agents, typically 3% or 6%, 3 per side. Concessions, 3% in concessions, and then 1% from the miscellaneous title fees when you're selling. So in this case, 10% of $100,000 sold price is 10,000. So if you take that ARV, that $100,000 sale price, back out all of these costs, your profit is $20,576. So let's dive a little deeper into what this really looks like. So our acquisition costs, $66,000. That's our 41 purchase, our 20 in repairs, and the 5 in closing costs. The loan was $64,400. So if Pine Financial could loan 70% of the after repair value and the loan 64,400, that is not 70% of that 100,000 ARV number that they actually sold the property for, because that would be 70,000. So when we did an appraisal on this property, we came up with, I think it was a $92,000 after repair value. Now, after 4 months of holding, and because of how they fixed it up and maybe some other market conditions, yeah, they were able to sell it for $100,000, a little bit higher than that ARV or than that ARV appraisal, which is great. But for the sake of this example, the loan, $64,400, the acquisition costs $66,000, so we could not loan the full amount. This was not a no money down deal. They had some money out of pocket at closing, right? About $2,000. So the total cash into the deal was just over $5,000. The $2,000 cash to close and the $3,000 in holding. So let's look at a cash on cash return on investment, cash on cash ROI. We had $20,000 in profit. We had $5,000 go out, right, of the total cash into the deal. So a 410% return on investment. This was a great deal for this investor. Now let's look at one more, slightly higher price point, right? The ARV on this one was $225. Purchase $114. So they're buying maybe just over 50% of the after repair value is their purchase price. Closing costs $11,000. Again, the big part of that is the hard money cost. Repairs $42,000 on this one. Holding 6 months, probably because $40,000 takes a little bit longer to get done than $20,000. So the 6 months of holding cost them, the investor, $11,775. Selling fees, again, the full 10%, $22,500. So if we start with that ARV of 225, back out all of those costs. On this example, the investor profited $22,587. Still a pretty good deal, I think, right? 22.5 is almost exactly 10% of that ARV. Safe number if you're an investor. So let's dive deeper. Acquisition costs, $168, right? That's that purchase and the repairs and the closing costs when they were buying. The loan was $157,500. So in this case, they sold it at $225. We also did our diligence up front at $225. So 157,500 is 70% of that 225 number. So in this case, they still had money down, cash into the deal, a total of 22,000. Okay, that's at 11,000 in holding and about 11,000 down at closing. So the investor made 22,000. They had 22 that went out of pocket, almost exactly a 100% cash on cash return.
Okay. Thanks, Justin, for the examples. And now let's move back into the IRA realm, because one of the things that we're, again, trying to illustrate here is the strategy of using hard money and grafting that into your IRA so that you can make money for your retirement within the tax-advantaged account. So I mentioned earlier that there are some disqualified persons that are associated with IRA investing. The IRS, again, is tracking that money because they've changed its tax status while it's in the account. And so one of the things that they do is put some rules in place so that they feel like that the ultimate tax event, whether it's at the beginning with a Roth or later at the end with a traditional or a SEP or simple or an account like that, is what they think it should be according to the rules. And one of the biggest ones that they put in place is a concept called no self-dealing. And what that really means is that the IRS would like you to keep your personal funds as well as some select family members separate from your IRA's funds, as well as separate from your IRA's purchases and assets. The idea being that in the IRS's mind, they're going to give you these tax advantages for this money for years or even decades, and they are thinking that that's what the money is for that later time period. So if you're taking a personal benefit from what your IRA is investing in now, generally speaking, that's going to be a tough spot for the IRS. So let's take self and dealing as different terms themselves and put them together, and you'll kind of see what I'm talking about. Every IRA has a list of persons that are considered to be disqualified persons, and that starts with the IRA holder and their spouse, and it moves to ascendants and descendant spouses. So all of these family members have some restrictions in terms of the way that they interact with the IRA, meaning that they can't buy and sell and things like that, and we'll go into the detail. It's these people's personal finances as well as any entity that they own or control. Now, a lot of people think that that means that all family members have these restrictions about how they interact with the IRA, but that's not actually the case. The sides of the family tree are not disqualified persons. And one of the ways that this comes into play a lot when we're talking about fix and flip strategies as well as fix and hold and redevelop and things like that is that the IRA holder themselves can't do the work on the property. And so that can be a little bit of a hurdle, but one of the things that we've found is that anybody who's in that particular pursuit generally knows the people to call who do good work. So often your IRA can actually accomplish that same fix or redevelopment at a very similar cost. They obviously can't not pay themselves, and that does hurt. I'm not going to lie to you, but often what you're looking at is, hey, I've already contributed this money to my IRA. Now I need that money to make money. So how do I know how to do that the best? So I mentioned the fact that it's not only those persons, those family members, that lineal ascendants and descendants, their personal finances, but also any entity that they own or control. So their IRAs, their companies, their LLCs, all those entities are also considered to be disqualified. So what are the restrictions that those people have? Well, they can't sell something that they already own to the IRA or buy from the IRA. No credit arrangements, which means lending money as well as using the other entity as collateral for a loan. No providing services for the IRA. So again, that comes into that sweat equity participation. So unfortunately, those disqualified persons cannot do the work on your property. However, your brother or your aunt and uncle, cousins, so on and so forth, they can, according to the IRS rules.
So Clay, talking about that specifically, you providing services for your IRA, who found the deal and who said let's make an offer at this, and who analyzed the deal, and then who managed the contractor to get into the building? I mean, if that was me, but it's my IRA doing it, does that violate that?
It actually doesn't, and that's a good point. So one of the rules of thumb that we typically will introduce to people up front is that If you're the IRA holder, you are always going to be doing the brain power and the decision making because there's really nobody else to do it. So you're kind of the de facto brain power of everything that your IRA does. That's not considered to be providing services. What it's considered to be is the IRA holder making sound decisions for their IRA. So selecting an asset, negotiating the deal, choosing the team to work with, all of those things are considered to be acting in the best interest of your IRA. Now, if you're also a general contractor and you go over and do the work yourself, that's probably where you get a little bit out of bounds there because the brain power is good, the physical power not so good. And for instance, if you're a property manager, your IRA, obviously, if it buys a property, it can have a property manager, but you wouldn't want the property manager of record to be your property management company or your father's or mother's or kids, any of those disqualified persons. So the first, I guess, division that you might think of is use your brain power, but don't use your physical power. Secondarily, if you're ever going to think about what the line is, think about sitting at a table with an IRS auditor. And can you establish with that auditor, hey, all I did was make decisions in the best interest of my IRA. I didn't try to put any additional services with it. I was really just providing the brain power. And to take the tax metaphor the whole way, the idea behind the no providing services, of course, is that the IRS will think if you provide your professional services that you're actually contributing to your IRA, but all contributions to an IRA are limited, number one, and they have to be in cash. So what they construe your personal services in this particular regard is an over contribution to your account. So that's one of the lines of thought that's occurring with the providing services.
So if you own a property management company and you're either the IRA is either paying the property management company or even potentially waiving that cost, there's still that perceived
Correct.
you're providing services. Now, what about as a real estate agent? Something very similar then. If you're a real estate agent and you write an offer for your IRA to buy the property, and thus there's a commission involved, whether you take the commission or not, it would fall under that same thing, right? You're providing a service?
In a sense, the difference being that the service that you're talking about there is a necessary part of the IRA making an investment, so that, for lack of a better way to put it, is an exemption because you're really deciding what the asset is. So that's one of the cool ways that you get to use your personal expertise in service of your IRA. So that's not considered to be a prohibited transaction. Now, the receiving of the commission, that would get you in trouble with the IRS because, and I'll just put the other boxes on here. So the last one is getting paid by your IRA. So you're not really supposed to be investing your IRA in order for you to make personal money in the here and now. So the fact that you, as a real estate professional, can go out and write the offer and also, make the negotiations and that kind of thing, again, is basically considered to be brain power. But you don't want that to result in any money coming back to you personally. So what I typically see a real estate professional do is they will go to the seller and say, hey, look, there's not going to be a commission on this side because this is an IRA purchase. Can we negotiate a price difference that's roughly equivalent to what my commission would be? Because in that way, all the IRS sees is an agreed upon purchase price, and certainly it would still be in the realm of market value. And so the positioning of that real estate professional might still be able to be satisfied in terms of overall kind of financial arrangements, but you wouldn't want the IRS to ever get the sense or the reality that you got a commission from that transaction.
Gotcha. And so along those lines, what about if my IRA can't, say, pay all cash for the property we want to buy, but personally I have half of that purchase price and my IRA has half of that purchase price? Going back a slide, I think it showed that me individually is in the red, right? So I can't partner with my IRA, or could I? How does that look?
Well, you can under certain circumstances, and this is the way it would look. So because the IRS wants to keep that division or that separation between your personal finances and your IRA finances, you want to make sure that the division of ownership is a solid one and answered on every single transaction. So, for instance, if I wanted to be a tenant in common with my IRA, I could do that. And let's say that it was my IRA is putting in 60% and I personally was putting in 40%. As long as every single disbursement for purchase, for maintenance, for insurance, taxes, all that stuff was split 60-40, and all the returns were also split 60-40, the only thing the IRS would see is that the personal taxes would have a percentage of 123 Main Street, and then my IRA would also have an undivided percentage ownership of 123 Main Street. And so in that regard, as long as that division stays the same, that would be a way that you could have a situation where your IRA was making some benefit as well as you personally, but the fact that the IRA does have some ownership, whatever that percentage is, does invoke all these rules. So you would still have to not take use of it and not do sweat equity and that kind of thing.
Gotcha. But if my IRA was going to be 60% and my spouse was going to be the 40%, that then hits as a disqualified person and we can't do it that way?
No, because in my example before, I'm still a disqualified person. We're just owning the property side by side. It's just that you can't exchange cash for ownership position and that kind of thing. Now, your IRA and your wife, personally, you're also disqualified entities to one another. So that same rigidity amongst the percentages, and does have to be a dollar for dollar percentage interest in the property. That just has to stay the way it is for all of those disbursements and receipts until such time as you guys would, either sell the property or distribute it or whatever you would do.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
And then, so I hear a lot about checkbook control of the IRA. So is that again something similar? I want to buy a property, and where I usually hear it as a lender is somebody wants to invest in say, a fix and flip. They don't have enough in reserves to qualify for the property, so they say, "Oh, well, I've got checkbook control of my IRA." So it kind of implying I can just cut a check from my IRA.
Right.
Now, how does that look and feel and go?
Well, it's usually I have people outline the entire scenario to know exactly what's going on. Checkbook control in and of itself is simply a scenario where the IRA in its garden variety form, an LLC is formed, the IRA buys 100% of it, and then afterward the LLC names the IRA holder as the manager. So that person then has the state document saying that they're the manager of the LLC, as well as a check of IRA money, and they go down to their bank and they open a business checking account. So they are then writing checks on their IRA money. Now, all of the rules that we're talking about in this slide and the disqualified persons follow that money. So even if you have checkbook control, you don't absolve yourself of any of the rules that follow the IRA money because, again, that's in the IRS's realm, and they're trying to make sure that the tax event stays the way that they think it should be. So if somebody is going to take out a loan personally and support that with their IRA money that they can write checks on, the IRS would not see that as kosher, so that would be a prohibited transaction, and vice versa. So if your IRA was buying a property, you're not allowed to have your personal assets pledged as security for that loan. It's called a non-recourse loan, and of course you guys do it for hard money lending, and so that really is the core of why lending to IRAs is a little bit different than lending to a person personally, is because they can't attach their personal assets as collateral.
Gotcha, gotcha. So we definitely have some questions coming in regarding this type of stuff, but a lot of people have their own specific questions, their specific situation. So if
Sure.
there's more on that, is it probably best if they just reach out directly to you, Clay, via maybe email or something like that and spell out their question and their situation? Because everybody's got a slightly different variation, I would imagine. So
Yeah.
rather than spend the rest of our time diving into those specific scenarios, maybe better for them to reach out to you after the fact.
Yeah, I would say so. And one of the things that I'll mention too is that it's worth your time to outline the scenario to somebody who knows all the rules so that they can tell you, hey, look out for this, or this is clearly considered to be out of bounds and that kind of thing. So it really is worth your time to outline your personal scenario so that you can find out what the pitfalls may be. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. All right.
Okay. Great. So and I'll just go back to this real quickly because I just to finish it up. So the other one that comes into play a lot is personal use of plan assets. So if your IRA owns it, presumably the IRS would say that you're not supposed to take advantage of that by using that property. And that means also that that list of disqualified persons can't be a renter of your IRA owned property, even if they pay market rent and you would be trying to apply logic to the IRS, and there really isn't any there. So um, it's just prohibited, and if they discovered it, obviously they would penalize you for that. So that's the dealing part. So the self is the disqualified persons, the dealing is these types of activities. And if you do have additional questions about that or want to run a scenario past us, we're more than happy to do that. Please call me personally or any of the staff that's in the business development staff. They're all experts at what we do. So, but for now, let's go on to the rest of the presentation. We're going to start talking about the hard money lending within an IRA.
Yeah, so Clay, you had mentioned that an IRA loan will have to be a non-recourse loan. So take a second and tell us, what is a non-recourse loan? What does that mean?
Right. Well, I would say generally speaking, what it means is that the lender is acknowledging that if there's default, even if it's the IRA's default, that all they can really get is the property that is the subject of the loan, the collateral. They can't come after the IRA holder's personal property or anything like that. Now, you certainly will find occasionally loan documents that will attach other collateral to it, but in its general scenario, the lender is saying, hey, I'm basing this loan on the property itself and what I think it can produce and what you probably will be able to get out of it. So that if there is default, generally speaking, the lender really only takes the property itself.
Right, and typically that's what usually happens anyway, but 99% of loans that are done are full recourse, meaning they have the option, the ability to come after you. If you default and we have to take the property back and foreclose, then there's the option to go after your personal bank accounts and whatever else to make up whatever shortfall the bank may have, right?
Right, because the borrower has pledged that in order to secure the loan. And frankly, the net effect of that is that typically lenders will have different loan terms for non-recourse because their potential for having a downside is greater.
That what an amazing transition to Pine's IRA loan in the slide that's up there. Thanks, Clay. So
I do what I
exactly
can.
so exactly to Clay's point right there might be different loan terms. So Pine's IRA loan is a non-recourse loan, but we're not loaning that 70% of after repair value. For the IRA loan, we will lend up to 65% of that after repair value or 90% of cost, whichever is lower. And why is it important that it's lower? Because we want to make sure that the IRA has more skin in the game. With that 100% rehab loan, you may have no skin in the game because we lend all the money you need. But in this case, we want to make sure the IRA does have some skin in the game. Now, when I'm talking about 90% of cost, I'm looking at purchase and repairs. That's what I'm referring to by the cost. Now, for the typical 70% ARV loan, we want to make sure you have 7.5% of the loan amount in reserve, so liquid, checking, savings accounts, things like that. Now, in the IRA loan, I want to make sure your IRA has at least 15% in reserves because you as an individual have income, hopefully, potentially, right? You have maybe a W-2 job, you have something else, so there's income in case there's payments, which there certainly are, in case there's some change orders or something like that pops up with the project. In your IRA, typically IRAs don't have recurring income, right? So I want to make sure the IRA is more liquid to, again, cover those payments. And of course, if anything changes, right? If your electrician says the quote to change the outlets and the outlet covers is $500, And then your IRA buys the house, gets into it, and then the electrician says, actually, we have to rewire the whole house. It's going to be 5,000, right? That's a change order. I want to make sure in this case the IRA has money to make that $4,500 difference.
And just for clarification there, Justin, do you require, and this is something that we encounter every once in a while, is the lender will say, hey, what's the cash value of this IRA? And as long as the account holder tells us it's okay to release that information, we will do that. So is it that the cash is sitting there, or is it that the person is making money, so if there's a cash shortfall, they could still make contributions and meet the shortfall, or how do you guys look at that?
Uh, what we probably want to see is that the cash is actually sitting there, because I want to make sure that if your IRA needs to cut that check to the electrician, that they can
Right.
do it as fast as they possibly can. Because if not, if you have to liquidate funds or you have to make a contribution, if it's still allowed in that year or whatever the case is, that takes time. And when that happens, this handsome fellow on this on the screen there, he's gonna walk down to the next project, right? And then by the
Gotcha.
time you get those funds and you cut him the check, then okay, now you're back on his schedule. You've got even more lost time, which is extra payments, which is the project being delayed. So it just starts snowballing. So yeah, really, we would prefer that the money is there and liquid, so that if that has to happen, it can happen sooner than later.
Got it.
All right, so let's revisit these two examples. Back to Vrain. The after repair value, are we going to lend 65% of that after repair value or 90% of cost? And then what would the profit to your IRA be? And again, same thing on 26, which is going to be better, the 65% or the 90% of cost? And of course, what is the profit to your IRA? Because your IRA is going to buy this property. That's the way we're looking at it. So all the profit dollars go to your IRA. So on Vrain, same ARV. In this case, they sold it for 100. Same purchase, 41. Closing costs are a little bit different. They're a little bit lower. Why would that be? Well, because we're loaning less money. So a smaller loan means the costs, which are usually based on a percentage of that loan amount, right? Lower loan, lower dollars there. Still 20 in repairs. Holding, same 4 months, but a little bit less. Again, it's because the loan amount is smaller. 10,000 to sell the property again. So in this case, because there's lower loan fees, the profit dollars go up, right? And the first time we looked at it, they made about 20,000. Now they're making 21,000. So how does that look though? Acquisition, 65,000. The loan, 59,000. In this case, 90% of cost was lower. So they had what, $6,000 or so out of pocket at closing. So cash into the deal. Your IRA had $9,545. So maybe the big question on people's minds is, how much does my IRA have to have in order to do this? Well, in this case, the IRA needed $9,500 to both get through the closing and to make the payments. And then, of course, there would be a little bit extra because we want to make sure you have that in the reserves. So what does that mean on this return on investment? $21,000 in profit, but they had $9,500 go out, so a 222% return. So if you guys made any notes, the first time we looked at it, it was a 410% return on investment. This time it's only a 222% return, okay? So the cash on cash ROI went down, but the dollars actually went up. Now, jump over to 26th Avenue. The ARV is still the same, 225. Purchase the same, 114.5. Closing costs, again, a little bit lower. Repairs are the same at 42. Holding 6 months, a little bit lower at 10,000. Again, because the loan amount is a little bit lower. Selling fees, you still got to pay the agents the same amount, so that came to 22,000. So in this case, the profit dollars are up to 24,000. So acquisition costs, a little bit lower at 167. The loan was 146. So in this case, 65% of the ARV was lower. So at closing, they had what? $20,000 down. Total cash into the deal between the 20,000 down and then the 11 or so in holding costs, $31,000 out of pocket, right? The IRA had $31,000 out into the deal. The IRA made 24,000. They had took 31,000 to make it, so a 76% return on investment. Still, now that is way down, but it is still an incredible return for an IRA to be making. This one, we just kind of threw this in for fun because it was an IRA investment, but it's not quite following the same things. This was something I did personally. I have my IRA with New Direction IRA, and I had an opportunity to buy a non-performing note. And I had the opportunity to buy that note for $55,000. So my IRA, so it wasn't me. I'm sorry, I keep saying me. It wasn't me. My IRA bought the note. So my IRA, Clay over there, signed a check for $55,000, and Justin's IRA is buying this. Now, there were some attorney's fees, so there were checks cut to the attorney. Construction, because we wound up having to foreclose on that property, which was already started from the person I bought the note from. We took the property back because nobody bid on it at the auction. We put $20,000 of work into it, handled some back HOA fees, other miscellaneous costs for about $3,500, and then we sold the condo. We, of course, paid real estate agents. It came to about $4,800. So the total costs were just about $85,000. We sold the condo for $160,000. So this was a slightly different way. It wasn't necessarily planned to be a fix and flip, but it turned into one that my IRA did. Now, my IRA didn't use leverage. It just used all cash to buy this one. But quick little fun aside, another way that I didn't have the 55,000 cash. I didn't have the 50 plus 20, the total of 85,000 cash sitting there, but my IRA did. So I was still able to do this deal.
Right, and that's one of the things that I come back to a lot, which is that, so a lot of people will ask me the analysis between should I invest in my IRA or outside my IRA, and I think that the first sticking point or the first marker on that really is, have you already contributed to an IRA or not? Now, the tax analysis of that inside the IRA, outside the IRA is a great one to do, and we always encourage people to run the numbers. IRAs are really just part of your overall financial world. But one of the things that I do come back to often is that somebody will say, well, if the numbers are always better outside, and that's not always the case, but if they are, why would I ever invest in using my IRA? And the answer is, well, you've probably already contributed to an old 401k or an old IRA somewhere, and at this point the analysis is not should I invest inside my IRA or outside, it's shoot, this money already has those tax advantages. I need that money to make some money so that I take advantage of the tax advantages. So that can really, the analysis can really change depending upon where you are and what you're considering. Now, going back to the debt part, we talked about this already, so I won't spend a whole lot of time on it, but one of the things that's really a factor that I run into a lot is that a lot of lenders don't lend to IRAs, even though a lot of IRA lenders think that that's a really good deal for them because people are often very cautious with their IRAs. But many lenders just don't know. They don't know how to run the numbers, or they don't feel confident enough for it. So it really is one of those things where all lenders won't do this kind of loan. So this insight that Justin's given us is something that not everybody knows about. So appreciate that insight, and also the way that it works within your IRA. Now, the last bit on that slide back there, which I'll go back to, is that UBIT may apply. So we were talking about the overall tax analysis inside your IRA versus outside. Well, if your IRA is a fix and flipper, there is going to be something called UBIT, unrelated business income tax, that occurs on the net profits of the deal. And the reason for that, I could go through the the long history of how UBIT came about with nonprofits and so on and so forth. But the reality is that it occurs in a couple of different circumstances, or a few in this case. So owning a pass-through, meaning untaxed entity that's operating a business. So for instance, an LLC that runs McDonald's, or in this case, an LLC or just an IRA that is running what the IRS would consider to be a fix and flip business. Also, if you use debt financing on a more conventional level, meaning that the IRA is taking out a longer term loan and not flipping the property, the returns from that because you're using money that was never contributed to your IRA, may also incur some UBIT. So the those profits, the net profits that are associated with the debt leverage, may incur some UBIT. And then if you have outstanding debt leverage at the time of sale, some unrelated business income tax could occur there as well. But for today, what we're talking about, because we're focusing on fix and flips, the thing that I'll mention to you is that unless you have your IRA owned fix and flip business housed within a C Corp that's already paying business taxes, then the business tax part of it will take place at the IRA level. And that's where UBIT comes in. It is just a tax. It's a cost of doing business, and it is a cost, and it's a good one to figure because you want to know what your return is. But it is not a penalty, and the unfamiliarity with it often scares people away because even a lot of financial professionals don't know. But the fact of the matter is the tax code doesn't prohibit using leverage within your IRA in any number of ways, with the exception of having a disqualified person provide collateral or be part of the credit equation. So UBIT is the name of the tax itself, and we talked about the two scenarios. So UDFI is when you have ongoing profits from a property that an IRA owns with debt leverage or is selling a property with debt leverage at the time of sale. UBTI is the fix and flip business or the McDonald's that's within an IRA but not housed underneath the C Corp. And really, this will be obvious to most of you guys probably, but the idea is simply that if you've contributed $150,000 to your IRA, it can buy stock, it could buy a piece of real estate, but with the leverage, you can actually really extend your buying power. And this is the more conventional approach. So the thing that Justin was talking about was a really surprisingly low number to me of how much money the IRA would have to have in order to get a hold of a property. So if that's something that you're comfortable with and it's a strategy that you use outside your IRA, you might consider using it inside your IRA.
Yeah,
The other
so
thing that
Clay, there was a question on that. They
yeah,
said the question was that they understand that non-recourse loans, they typically need 40% down. So why would somebody have that be their common knowledge?
well, I think that goes back to our discussion about the lender making themselves comfortable with the fact that if there's default, they can only take the property. So they do change the terms typically. So the 40% it's a reasonably normal number for us to see for somebody who is offering a longer term non-recourse loan to an IRA. They want to have that, again, as you put it, more skin in the game so that they know that everybody is pulling hard on the sled and so on and so forth, and that they can make themselves whole if there's a default. And so that it's not unusual, but the fact of the matter is the lender and the IRA holder negotiate the terms. The IRS doesn't get in the middle of it, nor does the IRA provider. So it really is an open playing field in that regard. I think what you're looking for is a place where the lender feels comfortable and the borrower can make the property produce what it needs to produce as a return.
Gotcha. So yeah, so I mean, obviously, what we were talking about through Pine Financial, using a hard money lender, was way less than 40%. But maybe if you go to a local bank and you're looking to finance a rental property or something like that, they may want, that 40% or 35% or whatever that is down, because that is their variation on their standard loan to accommodate the non-recourse.
Right. I would say that 40% number that they're talking about is more common for a buy and hold.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that scenario. And if you are in that scenario, or even if you're not, the other leverage kind of strategy that we certainly see our account holders use is that they'll take whatever money they have in their IRA and they'll split it up to its maximum effect using leverage so that they can get a hold of more properties. Again, it has a lot to do with their age and their aggressiveness and the other things they have going on in their financial lives, any number of things like that. But it is a strategy that we do see people use. And I think that in terms of this thing, the UDFI on sale, I'm going to give this to you really quickly, which is basically just that the UBIT that's calculated is split up into two pieces. Typically speaking, over the years you have taken depreciation on your IRA's version of a 1040, which is called a 990T. So that does get taxed. All of the depreciation that you've taken would get taxed at the Section 1250 rate, and then shorter long-term capital gains on the upside of the sale of the property. Now, this is not this is the again the longer term, more of a buy and hold scenario. When we're talking about the fact that it's we're talking about UBIT as it is associated with a fix and flip. Typically, what's the parallel is this, and we've already talked about it a little bit, so I won't spend a ton of time on it. But on the left-hand side, you have a C corp. It makes some revenues, it pays some business tax, and then the shareholders get their take. On the right-hand side, as a pass-through, we chose an LLC here. It generates some revenue. So let's say your IRA owns this LLC. The revenue and the money that comes back to the IRA actually isn't being taxed because of the corporate entity as a pass-through. And so UBIT is really just a substitute for the business tax. And the reason I think that this is important in terms of the way that we're talking and the path of the money is, of course, that the revenue all comes to the IRA first, and then the IRA pays the UBIT. But the reason that I bring this up in terms of the fix and flips is often the tax comparison or the analysis is, if I want to do fix and flips in my IRA, do I want to go to the, I don't know, effort to create a C corp? Because is the taxation, the overall taxation, going to be more from a business tax perspective on a C corp than it would be for UBIT? Now, UBIT is calculated on the trust and estate rate, which is, if you've ever seen it, it's a chart, and it does go up relatively fast, relatively quickly. But there's still analysis to be done. So, like everything that Justin was saying, as well as what I've been saying, is it's always a matter of running the numbers. And again, UBIT is just the cost of doing business, but it's good to know what it is. And I'll just mention real briefly that our website, newdirectionira.com, does have a pre-recorded all about UBIT webinar on it, so you can access it for free anytime you want and look at a more detailed analysis of how all this stuff gets calculated. I don't want to spend a ton of time on it tonight. We're also doing a live webinar tomorrow at the same time, or actually 4 p.m. Mountain Time, 6 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. So if you want to access that, that's also on our website as well. But UBIT can be a very detailed calculation. We're happy to give you all those details, but in the conceptual nature of what we're talking about today, really just understand that there's some taxation on that business that is not paying business tax. So when it comes to fix and flip considerations within your IRA, you make the decisions. So we talked about the fact that you're not really providing services, you're just providing the strategy for your IRA. You get to bring your team of folks as long as they're non-disqualified in terms of work. Now, disqualified people can be part of your financial team or your advisor or things like that, so don't make it too big a net there. But the folks who work on your property need to be non-disqualified persons, but you get to bring your own team. The IRA does pay the bills, so purchase, maintenance, debt service, all that stuff. It also receives all the profits. If you're going to be doing fix and flips within your IRA, again, doing an analysis of whether you'd pay more overall tax as a C corp or at the trust rate can be a great analysis. And the IRA does pay the UBIT to the IRS. So I talked about the fact that the money all flows to the IRA, and then the IRA pays the UBIT, and that's the flow of the cash. It does not affect your personal taxes in a given year. The only thing that typically will affect that is contributions, distributions, or a traditional to Roth conversion. Your IRA's business ventures and its earnings, or losses, hopefully not, that can be very big one way or the other and not affect your personal taxes. So this is a tax that the IRA pays for the ability to run a business in that regard. So understand that. And then that's the end of our sweep of how your IRA can use debt financing and specifically hard money. And I have a slide here with our contact information. I know that Justin is really willing to answer any questions that you have either now or later, and I am as well. So I will turn it back over to Justin to see if there's any questions in the here and now, but know that we're, at least from an IRA perspective, and I know Justin from his perspective is willing to address questions for you at any time.
Yeah, absolutely. Clay, thank you so much for coming and joining us tonight on the webinar. A ton of information, I think, in the past hour, especially if no one's really familiar with the IRA, it might almost be overwhelming. So please, if that's the case, jot down Clay's contact information and reach out. Get on their email list and keep up with all the different classes they do. Pine Financial, we do the same thing. We do a ton of classes in addition to the webinars and the hard money loans that we make. So definitely, if you're not already on our email list, definitely reach out and get onto that list. And we do a ton of classes with New Direction to make sure that our clients understand the options and how well that might work for them. I know we went a few minutes over. Appreciate everybody sticking around with us. If you got a few minutes longer, especially you, Clay, there are a few questions. So I'd love to stay on the line a couple minutes longer and see if we can answer these people's questions. You got a few more minutes, Clay?
I do. I'd be glad to.
All right, so let's see. First one, can you move money in a 401k over to an IRA?
You can. The restrictions for that are typically if you are no longer employed at the company where that sponsored the 401k, you absolutely can, and you can do it without penalty and without tax. So once you've separated from employment, any of those plans like a 401k, 403b, 457, 401a, they are portable so that you can move that into position with a different custodian. Now, if you are still employed there, you would ask them if they offer an in-service distribution, meaning that they would let you move some of the money, although not all, out of the 401k plan, again, without tax and without penalty.
Yeah, when I actually moved mine over to New Direction, I think I took two different retirement accounts for companies I was no longer with, rolled them into one IRA, so I actually combined them into one new account over there.
Right, and that that rollover chart that we went through, I went past it very fast, but a lot of times you can combine it, which would help you obviously with your IRA fees and things like that. So it also makes it easier to organize.
Absolutely. Um, so does Pine Financial Group lend to IRAs located outside of Colorado? That's interesting. So we want our clients to be in the state they're investing, and we lend in Colorado and Minnesota. We want the deals to be in the state that they live. But the IRA, I mean, I guess if you have an account with New Direction IRA who's based in Colorado, but you live in Minnesota and the property is in Minnesota, then we would be okay with that. It's not necessarily that. It would be where, I guess, the IRA holder is located.
Well, and that's something that we find too, Justin. We can operate in every state, but because lenders, especially lenders to IRAs, are doing something that takes some skill and expertise and understanding, it often has boundaries in terms of their ability to do the analysis and things like that. We found that and listened to that from lenders. So it very well may be that you would find a lender that does have boundaries, but you also may be able to find another lender if it's not within Pine's boundaries.
Yeah, and I mean, and we do a very small niche specific loan. So if you're looking for a longer term loans for your rentals, we wouldn't be the go-to regardless of where your property is. So it's definitely something, if you're interested in this, be following up with Clay and find out the specifics about getting your account set up with them. But then, see maybe who Clay has done business with. He can't necessarily refer people, but he might be able to say, well, we have done something in the past, with somebody else, and that's of course how Pine Financial is doing this webinar with Clay, or just reach out to your local banks and find out who does it. Have they even heard of it? Who at the bank is an expert maybe on those things?
The other thing I'll mention is that I actually have had account holders call me and say, hey, can you talk to my banker about what a non-recourse loan means and specific terms? I'm happy to do that as well. So if you have a personal business, a personal banking relationship, and they need some just rules and understanding, I'm happy to provide that.
Oh, that's great. Another question. All the examples we talked about were flips. Do the numbers look attractive for a turnkey? So for a turnkey rental property, I presume. The answer, maybe. Of course, you got to run your numbers and do the analysis. And what kind of financing and who would you get that with, and what are they charging, and how much down, and how much does your IRA have, and just diving into those things. So it might. You could certainly go and just buy properties, have your IRA buy a rental property. that does not need any work. Again, you can't manage the property. But yeah, it all comes down to just running the numbers and probably having those deeper conversations with Clay or someone he works with to make sure that you understand if I do this and how I do this, what are the implications and how much can I do or not do and who can do it and what are the taxes and all that other good stuff.
Right, we're happy to give you the parameters of your participation and stuff like that. I will say that we've seen, well, I shouldn't say that. We've seen a lot of scenarios. So turnkey, hard money, buy and hold, buy and fix and hold, any number of things. It really is up to the person's. Usually, it's their personal expertise or the scenario or the strategy that they're used to. So, if you have a scenario that you're comfortable with and you want to run that past us and say, hey, where do I need to be careful or what should I look for here, that's actually a great exercise and we're happy to do that for you.
So another question, it looks like as we were going, wanted us to go back a slide or two to show the qualified, disqualified family members and such. But Clay, is that something you could send out as a PDF if somebody is interested and they reach out to you?
You bet. Glad to.
Perfect.
It's also on our website. Yep.
Perfect. Yeah. So feel free to reach out to Clay, the info at New Direction IRA. Reach out to me if you want, and I can get my hands on that as well and email it over to you. It's an awesome slide. It's really powerful, showing you who is qualified and not disqualified because there's so many. It's all in your family kind of a thing, and it's which is which. So it's always better to just have a quick sheet to refer to, or just pick up the phone and call Clay.
Yep. Please do.
I think that's about it. There's a couple questions again on who you can or how you can. You got a second or two for those?
Sure.
Does a 529 plan qualify for the same benefits as an IRA with regard to real estate?
Unfortunately not. So 529 is generally speaking state run, and it's just a different animal. Yep.
Gotcha. And someone I think just wanted to clarify that yes, it is okay to split ownership of the property between your personal funds and an IRA.
In certain circumstances, so you have to arrange it either as tenants in common on the title work, or you could arrange it where those two entities are investors in an LLC or an LP or some sort of entity, even a land trust, with specific ownership percentages, and then have that entity go out and purchase the real estate. But so there's a couple ways that you can structure it. But yes, side-by-side ownership is okay. It's just the exchange of ownership for money and that kind of thing that the IRS prohibits.
Gotcha. So similar, how about if my IRA and my wife's IRA buy properties?
Yes, so very similar. So they are disqualified entities to one another, but they certainly could be tenants in common alongside of each other and or co-investors in an LLC or some sort of entity that then goes out and buys it. So anytime you have disqualified entities that are going to be the partners or the tenants in common, the only thing you really need to think about is that it will be kind of rigid, and you do want to set it up where you can pay the bills with those percentage splits every time. And it can get tiring unless you set it up in a way that's easy for you. So taking the time to set it up properly is often the way that you make it work.
Yeah, absolutely. As with almost any real estate transaction or investment, the more time you spend upfront making sure that it's going to go smoothly, whether it's having enough contractors and doing enough diligence on the property, doing enough diligence on the different financing types to make sure you're lining that up properly, or you spend enough time to really understand how do I need to set this up legally through an entity or through your IRA or all of that to make sure it's all lined up clean and safe and smart. It always pays off in the long run. Well, Clay, I think there's just one last question, and that is, will there be a replay of the webinar? So Pine Financial, we generally try to record all of our webinars. It looks like we're recording right now, so fingers crossed it all goes well and smooth. If that's the case, we'll send out a link. We'll upload it onto our YouTube page. We'll send out a link to it. And we'll probably also post a link on our Facebook page. So if you're not on our email list, reach out to me, get on that. Again, there's my email address, justin@pinefinancialgroup.com. Click over to Facebook and like our page, Pine Financial Group. like our page, and we'll be sending an update there as well. Clay, any last thoughts?
No, just hey, thanks a lot for spending some time with us. And the presentation again, we tried to mix the expertise of Justin along with the rules of the IRA. If any of it doesn't make sense to you, we're happy to clean that up. And I really, it's impressive that you spent some time to figure it out. And let's hopefully your IRA investing will go great. Let's help.
Perfect. All right, Clay. Well, thank you so much for coming out and spending your night with us. Thank you to everyone who was on the call tonight. Looking forward to next month. Talk to you all soon. Thank you.